to. And I'm just wondering, like, you became like the podcast that could, and right now me and my friends are like trying to make the podcast that like might. I'm just wondering.
I'm happy to talk to you like one-on-one about that, because I can talk about podcasting all day.
It kind of goes to Jeff too. How do you build that listenership? Like, how do you and keep it consistent?
Well, on our end, I agree completely. It's consistency. I mean, I think that's the hardest part about what they're doing at Irrational and what Robert's doing is it's impossible to produce a show like that weekly with that level of content unless you had a huge staff. I mean, that's a bridge too far. And I think it would be crazy to expect anybody to be producing an hour-long weekly show with that level of forethought, planning, scripting, original music, all that kind of stuff. It's just not going to happen. So the question is, what do you want your show to be? And then how do you make sure that that's coming out on a really, religiously frequent basis? I mean, I really think if you miss a week, you miss 2 weeks, you just lost half your audience.
Right, it's really terrible. You have to be consistent, and I think, it's just a matter of with EA podcasts, like the listenership, it definitely is not nearly where it should be now, but it's just, I sort of feel like, we'll just wear people down after a while. If we do enough, we'll be like, all right, listen. The good thing about it having a small audience over time is then you have the chance to experiment and figure out what your voice is. I mean, when we started GFW Radio, I don't know if anybody listened to it. Anybody, but we, and that was good because they sucked, right? And then we learned that we actually liked doing it, and we developed our voice and personalities. And so by the time it actually was popular, we were sort of ready to be popular. Like, I don't think the EA podcast, I think it's halfway, like we're getting there, but we're still sort of finding our feet. So I don't need all those huge listeners yet, but I'll be happy when they come later.
On that note, it's my personal suspicion, and aside from I assume Nelson, you have just huge numbers for your show, and attribute that to the quality of the show, and also the fact that you can give out a whole bunch of information on a regular basis.
Yeah, podcasting is a highly efficient method of delivering information. The other thing you guys all brought up great points. And what I also want to point out is,
let me finish that real quick. I was just going to say, unlike that, for a studio where you just have a game, there's only so much we can say about the game. I think it's been my gut that it's harder for us to compete with the press podcasts, in part because people might have a natural suspicion, skepticism toward what they're hearing from corporate people. But furthermore, even if you're talking about just games in general, if you're coming across as professionals, in a certain field, they don't feel as comfortable arguing with you. And I think the ability of the listeners to regularly argue with podcast hosts and guests is a huge part of driving their growth. Being able to go on and say, this guy's a fucking idiot, he's wrong. Ken says something, and he's talking about something very specific about making a game that they surely don't know any better, or they're not going to sing. They do.
One of the points I want to bring up also, and this is something that my co-hosts bring me about all the time, is make sure that in addition to everything that you heard on the panel, make sure it sounds good. I have listened to so many unlistenable podcasts because all they use is the microphone in their laptop, and I can hear the hard drive ticking in the background. So, and unfortunately, good audio equipment is expensive, and you pay for as much as you can afford because you're gonna hear it. So that's really one of the points.
Yeah, and so that also speaks to doing post.
Yeah.
I mean, we spend, like they were saying, we spend about 2 times the record time at least doing post on a show that's just a fan show. One more question, and then we're going to have to run.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to call.
We're out. All right, we got the hook. Thank you guys so much.